this test of the Ohio Emergency Alert System.
The static hissed through my headphones like a living thing. White noise punctuating the silence of another empty night. I twisted the dial on my radio set, searching through the frequencies the way I'd done every evening for the past 3 years. Most nights I found nothing. Sometimes I picked up weird interference, or the ghost of some old transmission bouncing around the atmosphere. Tonight felt different though. My name is Ethan, and I'm 28 years old. I've been alone in this farmhouse for longer than I care to remember. The house sits on about 40 acres of land in rural Ohio, far enough from any major city that the infected never came through in large numbers. My parents brought me here when I was 5, right after the outbreak started. I remember the drive like it was yesterday, even though it's been 23 years. My mum crying in the passenger seat, my dad's knuckles white on the steering wheel, the smoke rising from Columbus in the rearview mirror. They didn't make it. Nobody did except me. I kept scanning through the frequencies, my notebook open beside me with a list of channels I monitored on rotation. Emergency bands, ham radio frequencies, even the old weather service channels. You never knew where another survivor might try to reach out. The chance of finding someone else alive got smaller every year, but I couldn't give up hope. Hope was pretty much all I had left. That's when I heard it. The voice cut through the static so clearly it made me jump. It was automated, emotionless, the kind of computer-generated speech the government used for emergency broadcasts. Alert! We are now 25 years into the nationwide quarantine. Remain indoors. Do not trust your memories of the infected. This message will repeat. I sat there, staring at the radio like it had just told me the sky was green. 25 years. That couldn't be right. I'd been keeping track of time religiously since I was old enough to understand calendars. I had notebooks full of dates, every day marked off. I knew exactly how long it had been. 23 years, not 25. I spun the dial to another emergency frequency. The same message played word for word. I tried another channel, same thing. Every government frequency I could find broadcast that identical message on a loop. We are now 25 years into the nationwide quarantine. My hands were shaking as I pulled off the headphones. The farmhouse felt colder suddenly, like someone had opened a window even though every opening was boarded up tight. I stood and walked to my calendar hanging on the wall. I'd made it myself, carefully marking each day for years. By my count, the outbreak happened in October of 2002. Today was December 5th, 2025. 23 years, 2 months, and a handful of days. So why did the broadcast say 25 years? I tried to sleep that night, but couldn't. I kept thinking about those 2 missing years. Had I miscounted somewhere? It seemed impossible. I'd been so careful. Every morning I woke up, I made a mark. Every month I turned the page. I'd celebrated my birthdays alone in this house, 23 of them. I was 5 when we arrived. Now I was 28. The math worked out. But that broadcast kept playing in my head. That flat, emotionless voice insisting on a truth different from mine. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to go into town. I hadn't been to Riverside in almost 6 months. The trips were dangerous and usually not worth the risk, but I needed answers. I needed to find something with a date on it, something I couldn't argue with. Old newspapers, calendars, anything that could tell me which of us was right, me or that automated voice. I geared up like I always did for supply runs. My leather jacket had extra padding sewn into it, thick enough to stop a bite if I got unlucky. I strapped on my homemade armor, pieces of thick plastic and metal that covered my forearms and shins. The baseball bat went into the loop on my pack, the barbed wire wrapped around it still sharp after all these years. I checked my hunting rifle, loaded it, and slung it over my shoulder. The infected weren't really a threat anymore. Most of them had rotted away years ago. The ones still shambling around were so decomposed and slow you could walk right past them if you were careful. But careful was how you stayed alive. So I always prepared like I might run into a horde. My truck started on the third try. The battery was getting old, but it had enough juice for the 15-mile drive to Riverside. I'd siphoned gas from abandoned cars over the years, storing it in barrels in the barn. Fuel was one resource I didn't have to worry about running out of anytime soon. The road to town was empty like always. I passed a few wrecked cars, their bodies rusted and covered in vines. Nature was taking everything back slowly. In another 20 years, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell humans had been here. I tried not to think about being the last person alive to see it happen. Riverside came into view as I crested a hill. The town looked frozen in time, buildings still standing but empty, streets overgrown with weeds. I'd looted most of the useful supplies years ago, but I'd never really looked for information before, never had a reason to question my timeline. I parked the truck on Main Street and grabbed my bat. The library was 3 blocks away. If anywhere would have newspapers and old records, it would be there. The walk through downtown was eerie. It always was. Store windows were smashed in, merchandise still scattered on the floors inside. A few skeletons lay in the street where people had fallen during the panic. I'd seen so many bones over the years, they didn't bother me anymore. They were just part of the landscape now, like the buildings and the cars. The library was a 2-story brick building that had held up well. The glass doors were shattered, but the structure was solid. I'd been inside a few times before looking for books to read. When you're alone for years on end, you'll read pretty much anything to keep your mind occupied. I headed straight for the newspaper archives in the basement. The librarians had kept physical copies of the local paper going back decades. I found the section marked 2002 and started pulling out papers from October. October 15th, 2002. The headline read, "Strange illness spreads through Columbus." I remembered this. My parents had been glued to the news that week. October 17th, 2002. Hospitals overwhelmed. Violent patients attacking staff. October 19th, 2002. This was the day we left. The headline said, "Governor declares state of emergency." The date matched my memory perfectly. But then I kept reading through the next editions. October 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Normal dates, nothing strange. Then suddenly, October 26th appeared. But between the 23rd and the 26th, the papers referenced events from October 24th and 25th, days that should have existed, but whose papers were missing from the archive. I checked again, thinking maybe someone had just taken those editions. But no, the papers went from the 23rd to the 26th with no gap in the shelf. Like those 2 days had been removed deliberately. I found more gaps as I went through the next few weeks. A day missing here, 3 days missing there. By the time November rolled around, there was an entire week gone. The papers jumped from November 3rd to November 11th, with nothing in between. My hands were shaking again as I counted up the missing days. 2 years. Give or take a few weeks, there were 2 years' worth of missing days scattered through those first months after the outbreak. That's when I heard the sound. Footsteps. Upstairs. Slow and deliberate. I grabbed my bat and moved toward the stairs, my heart hammering. In all my trips to Riverside, I'd never encountered another living person. The infected didn't move like that. Too controlled, too purposeful. "Hello?" a voice called out. Female, cautious. "Is someone down there?" I almost didn't answer. Meeting new people was dangerous. You never knew who had survived or what they'd become after years alone. But curiosity won out. I needed answers, and maybe this person had them. "Yeah," I called back. "I'm coming up. I'm armed, but I'm not looking for trouble." "Same here," the voice replied. I climbed the stairs slowly, bat ready. A woman stood near the front entrance, silhouetted against the daylight. She looked to be in her early 30s, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore practical clothes, jeans, boots, a thick jacket, and had a hunting knife on her belt. Her eyes were the first thing I really noticed, sharp and intelligent, like she was constantly calculating. "I'm Lisa," she said. "I've been living in the basement here for about 8 months. First time I've seen anyone else alive in over a year." "Ethan," I replied. "I live on a farm about 15 miles north. I'm just here looking for some information." She relaxed slightly, though her hand stayed near her knife. "Information about what?" I hesitated, then figured there was no point in hiding it. "How long has it been for you? Since the outbreak?" Lisa's expression changed. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. 25 years, she said, give or take a few months. Why? The floor felt like it tilted under me. It's been 23 years for me. I've been keeping track. I know I have. That's not possible, Lisa said. It's definitely been 25. I was 10 when it started. I'm 35 now. We stared at each other for a long moment. The dust motes floating through the light from the broken windows seemed to freeze in place. Did you hear the broadcast last night? I asked. On the emergency frequencies? She nodded slowly. Yeah, that's why I came upstairs. I wanted to see if the radio in the reference section still worked so I could listen again. I thought I'd heard it wrong. You didn't, I said. It said 25 years, but I'm telling you, I've been counting every single day. It's been 23. Lisa was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Do you remember everything? Every day since the outbreak? I opened my mouth to say yes, then stopped. Did I? I remembered the big things, arriving at the farmhouse, my parents dying, learning to survive alone. But the days themselves blurred together after a while, especially those first few years. I remember enough, I said, but my voice lacked confidence. Tell me what you remember about the infected, Lisa said. When you saw them during the outbreak. I described what I remembered. The shambling figures, their grey skin, their blank eyes. The way they moved slowly but relentlessly toward any noise or movement. How they bit anyone they caught, and those people became infected too. My memories were vivid and clear. Lisa was shaking her head before I finished. "That's not how I remember it," she said. "The infected weren't slow. They were fast, aggressive. They didn't just bite. They attacked with whatever they could grab. Rocks, pieces of glass, their bare hands. And there were so many of them, thousands pouring out of the cities." "No," I said. "That's not right. There weren't that many. They were scattered, easy to avoid if you were smart." "Ethan," Lisa said carefully, "we can't both be remembering the same thing if our memories are this different." She was right, and that terrified me more than any infected ever had. One of us was remembering wrong, or maybe both of us were. But how could that be possible? "I have something that might help," Lisa said. "Come on." I followed her down to the basement where she'd set up her living space. It was actually pretty clever. She had a camping stove, some canned goods, a sleeping bag, even a few battery-powered lanterns. In the corner was a backpack, and she dug through it until she found what she was looking for. A photograph, old and creased, but still clear. It showed a family, a man, a woman, and a young girl who must have been Lisa. They were standing in front of a farmhouse, smiling at the camera. The photo had that faded quality of pictures from the early 2000s. "This was taken a month before the outbreak," Lisa said. "It's the only picture I managed to keep." I looked at the photo, at the happy family that didn't exist anymore, and felt a familiar ache. Then I noticed the farmhouse in the background. Something about it looked familiar. The shape of it, the way the barn sat off to the left side. "Where was this taken?" I asked. "My family's farm, about 15 miles north of here. We had 40 acres, grew corn mostly." My mouth went dry. "What did the barn look like?" "Red," Lisa said. "Big red barn. My dad repainted it the summer before everything happened." "Why?" I sat down heavily on an old chair. "Lisa, I think that's my farmhouse." "That's not possible," she said. "This was my family's farm. The barn at my place has always been white," I said. "But it's the same layout, same position relative to the house, same property." Lisa stared at me, then at the photo. "Ethan, look at the picture again. Look at the barn." I did, and my vision swam. The barn in the photo was red, bright red, clearly freshly painted. But as I stared at it, something in my memory shifted. I suddenly had a flash of image, the same barn, but white. Both memories existed in my head at once, equally vivid, equally real. The barn was red, the barn was white. The barn was both and neither. "We need to go to the farmhouse," I said. "Right now." The drive back felt longer than it should have. Lisa sat in the passenger seat, quiet, clutching that photograph. I kept glancing at it, at that barn, trying to make sense of what I was seeing and remembering. "Tell me about your parents," Lisa said finally. "What were their names?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't remember. I could see their faces clearly in my mind. My mum's brown hair, my dad's beard, but their names were just gone, like trying to remember a dream that slips away when you wake up. "I don't know," I whispered. I should know. Why don't I know? Lisa didn't answer. She just looked out the window at the passing landscape. When we reached the farmhouse, I parked near the barn. We both got out and walked over to it slowly. The wood was painted white, faded and peeling in places from years of weather. But when I looked closer at a spot where the paint had chipped away, I could see it. Red paint underneath. The barn had been red once. I never noticed that before, I said. I've lived here for 23 years and I never saw that red paint. Lisa reached out and touched the old red paint, her fingers trembling. This was my home, she said. I grew up here. I played in this barn. How are you living in my house? I didn't have an answer. Instead, I said, come inside. There's something I need to check. We went into the farmhouse and I led her down to the basement. I'd been down here thousands of times over the years. I stored supplies here, kept my tools here, even slept here during the worst of the winter cold. I knew every inch of this basement, except I'd never noticed the door. It was set into the far wall, behind some old shelves I'd moved down here years ago. The door was heavy, metal, with a lock that had rusted through. Lisa saw it the same moment I did. Was that always there? She asked. No, I said. I don't think so. I would have seen it. But even as I said it, part of me wondered, how many times had I looked at that wall and just not seen the door? How many times had I walked right past it? I pushed the shelves aside and tried the door. The rusted lock gave way easily and the door swung open on protesting hinges. The room beyond was small and dark. I grabbed one of my battery-powered lanterns and shined it inside. Medical equipment. That was the first thing I saw. A hospital bed with restraints on the rails. IV stands. Machines I didn't recognize, but that looked like they belonged in a doctor's office. Cabinets full of supplies, bandages, needles, bottles of medicine with labels I couldn't read. What is this? Lisa said from behind me. I stepped into the room, the lantern casting strange shadows. There was a desk against one wall with files stacked on it. I picked up the top folder and opened it. My name was on the first page. Patient, Ethan Morrison. Age, 5 years. Admission date, October 19th, 2002. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the file. I kept reading. Patient brought in during initial outbreak. Infected with strain B7, exhibiting severe paranoid delusions and violent ideation. Parents deceased. Patient claims parents are alive and that the dead are rising. Patient highly dangerous. Recommend immediate isolation and treatment. The words blurred together. I flipped through more pages. Treatment logs, daily observations, notes about medications administered, descriptions of my behavior that I didn't remember. One entry, dated November 3rd, 2002, said, patient continues to believe in false timeline. Memory therapy showing limited success. Patient killed 2 orderlies today during episode. Restraints reinforced. Ethan, Lisa said softly. She was reading over my shoulder. Keep reading. I turned more pages. The entries continued for months, years, describing someone I didn't recognize, someone violent and delusional, describing me. The final entry was dated December 14th, 2004. More than 2 years after I was admitted. It said, "Patient has stabilized under isolation protocol. Delusions persist, but patient is no longer violent. Recommending permanent containment at Site 7. Patient cannot be safely reintegrated into society. Memories of family members remain persistent despite repeated treatment. Patient genuinely believes he is living a normal life." Site 7. This farmhouse. This place wasn't my home. It was a prison. I dropped the file and stumbled backward out of the room. Lisa caught my arm, steadying me. "It's not real," I said. "None of this is real. I didn't." "Ethan," Lisa said, and her voice was different now, gentler, the voice of someone talking to a frightened animal. "I need you to listen to me, very carefully." I looked at her and saw something in her expression that made everything click into place. She knew. She'd known all along. "You're not really a survivor," I said. "Are you?" Lisa shook her head slowly. "I'm sorry. No, I'm a doctor. I've been monitoring you from a distance for the past 3 years. We trigger the broadcast periodically to see how you respond, to see if you're ready to accept the truth." The world tilted sideways. I felt like I was falling even though I was standing still. There was no zombie apocalypse. "No," Lisa said. "There was an outbreak, a virus that caused extreme paranoia and violent delusions. The infected thought the dead were rising. They saw everyone around them as monsters. They killed people they loved, thinking they were protecting themselves. You were infected when you were 5 years old. A neighbor boy bit you at school. My parents," I said. "I remember them dying. I remember the infected getting them. The people you thought were your parents were Dr. Helen Foster and Dr. Richard Chen. They were trying to treat you. During one of your episodes, you killed them both. You thought they were infected. You thought you were defending yourself." I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. No, that's not true. I remember everything. I remember surviving. I remember 23 years alone. You've been here for 25 years, Ethan. The missing 2 years in the newspapers. Those were the 2 years you spent in active treatment before we moved you to isolated containment. We tried to help you, but you were too dangerous. The delusion was too strong. So we gave you what you needed, a world where the outbreak was real, where you were the survivor, where your actions made sense. Lisa gestured around us. The farmhouse, the supplies that mysteriously appear when you're running low, the infected that are always just slow enough and far enough away that you never have to actually fight them. We've been maintaining this for you, keeping you safe, keeping everyone else safe from you. I don't believe you, I said, but my voice cracked, because part of me did believe her. Part of me had always known something was wrong. The missing memories, the inconsistencies, the way time never felt quite right. The world outside has been rebuilding for 25 years, Lisa said. There are cities again. Society came back. But there are still about 3,000 patients like you scattered across the country. People too lost in their delusions to ever come back. People who would hurt others if they tried. So I'm just supposed to stay here? Locked up forever? You can come with me, Lisa said. We have better facilities now. Places where you could interact with other people, where you could have some semblance of a real life. But you'd have to accept the truth. You'd have to let go of the delusion. I looked around the basement, at the medical equipment, at the files with my name on them. Everything Lisa said made horrible sense. But my memories felt so real. 23 years of life, of survival, of being alone. How could all of that be fake? I need time, I said. I need to think about this. Lisa nodded. I understand. Take the night. I'll be upstairs. But Ethan, you need to know, if you stay here, if you don't come with me, others will come eventually. Your supplies are running out. We can't maintain this forever. And when it ends, she trailed off, leaving the implications hanging. She left me alone in the basement with the files and the evidence of a life I didn't remember living. I sat on the floor and tried to separate truth from delusion. But how could I tell which was which when my own mind couldn't be trusted? I must have sat there for hours. Eventually, I went back upstairs and found Lisa making something to eat on my camp stove. She'd found some canned soup in my supplies. Okay, I said. I'll go with you. You're right. This can't go on forever. Relief washed over Lisa's face. Thank you. I know how hard this must be, but you're making the right choice. We ate in silence, then gathered some of my things. Lisa said we could take my truck to the perimeter fence, which was apparently about 5 miles north of the farmhouse. Beyond that, there would be transport waiting to take me to the new facility. As we loaded the truck, the sun started setting. Long shadows stretched across the property. Lisa was checking my tires when I saw it. Movement at the edge of the woods. A figure shambling forward with that distinctive infected gait. Grey skin hanging loose on its bones. Blank eyes staring at nothing. Lisa, I said. There's one of them. She looked up from the tire, following my gaze. Ethan, there's nothing there. It's right there, I pointed. The infected was getting closer, maybe 50 feet away now. How can you not see it? Lisa's expression changed to concern. Ethan, you need to calm down. There's nothing in those woods. This is the delusion. This is what we've been talking about. But I could see it clear as day. The infected was reaching toward us, mouth hanging open. Behind it, more movement, more of them emerging from the trees. At least a dozen, maybe more. We need to go, I said, backing toward the truck. Now, they're coming. Ethan, stop. Listen to yourself. You're seeing things that aren't there. I grabbed my rifle from the truck bed. The infected were getting closer. 20 feet now. 15. Lisa was standing right in their path, and she didn't even see them. Get in the truck, I shouted. That's when my radio crackled to life in my jacket pocket. The automated voice cut through the evening air. Alert. We are now 25 years into the nationwide quarantine. Do not trust what they tell you about the infected. This message will repeat. Lisa heard it too. Her eyes widened. That's not supposed to say that. That's not the right message. The infected were 10 feet away. Lisa was still standing there, frozen, staring at my radio. I raised the rifle. I'm sorry, I said, and I honestly didn't know what I was apologizing for. for what I was about to do, or for the 25 years I couldn't remember, or for the doctors I'd killed when I was 5 years old, or for the fact that I would never know which version of reality was true. The infected reached Lisa. I pulled the trigger. The sound echoed across the farm as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and the static on my radio continued to hiss like a living thing, broadcasting its warning into the growing darkness.